Hi there, I'm Casey Edwards. I'm the Parent Education Coordinator for the SATB2 Gene Foundation. The mission of the SATB2 Gene Foundation is to enrich the lives of those affected by SATB2 associated syndrome through support, research, and education. Our webinar series is a huge part of our outreach for our families, and I am so excited to be joined today by Breanna Waldrup. Breanna is a speech and language pathologist that specializes in childhood apraxia of speech. She's the program director for Child Apraxia Treatment, which is a program for the Once Upon a Time Foundation. So Breanna, will you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do for your foundation?
Sure, and I'm so glad to be here today to chat with you, Casey, about this webinar series. So yes, I'm an SLP. I've been specialized in childhood apraxia of speech, or CAS as we call it, for about 9 years now. And I've worked in a private practice, now own a private practice that specializes in that. And then this past year was given the opportunity to join Child Apraxia Treatment, which our program, the goal of our program is to educate speech language pathologists and families about evidence-based treatment for childhood apraxia of speech. So we have a variety of initiatives to support that goal, such as providing free trainings for SLPs and families, providing support, funding research. And this is all, again, part of a program of the Once Upon a Time Foundation, which is a larger private nonprofit based in Fort Worth, Texas, that also funds a variety of other initiatives related to medicine, education, and the arts. So.
Well, it sounds like if one of our families had a speech language pathologist that were hoping to get a little more education on childhood apraxia of speech, that your foundation might really be a good place for them to start and get a little bit more information.
Absolutely, and that's definitely our goal. And so to that end, we do provide some free online courses for speech language pathologists. They can earn continuing education and they can learn more about the diagnosis and treatment of apraxia of speech. We also offer a variety of resources and articles for parents, especially parents who are new to that diagnosis. And even one of our courses actually is really appropriate for parents as well. And they're free and open to whomever would like to watch them. The videos are available on YouTube. So yes, definitely a great resource. We hope that families can share with their speech language pathologists, but also access themselves as well.
That is fantastic. So speech and communication issues are a pretty major part of SATB2 associated syndrome. Almost universally, our kids that are affected by SATB2 associated syndrome have speech and communication issues. Our research clinics have shown that the majority of these problems can be related to childhood apraxia of speech, but there's a huge initiative in our foundation to find out more about that. But because communication issues are so important to our families, we are creating this webinar series to kind of dig into childhood apraxia of speech and different topics that could help our families. So could you tell us maybe just a little bit about different kinds of speech and language issues and tell us more about childhood apraxia of speech in general?
Sure, of course. So when we think about communication, we kind of think about two big parts of communication. We think about language and we think about speech, at least from the speech language pathology and therapy perspective. So language is the words we use, how we use them to share ideas and get what we want. And that includes both receptive language, so understanding what others are saying to us, and then expressive language. So that's how we're sharing our thoughts, ideas, and feelings. And that, of course, includes speech. That's one way to express ourselves, but it also includes a variety of other modalities, such as nonverbal communication, our body language, our facial expressions. Written communication can certainly include AAC, or augmentative and alternative communication. So that might be something less formal like gestures, or more formal like sign language or PECs or picture exchange, or certainly speech generating devices. So speech is a part of expressive language, but really just one part. And as speech language pathologists, when we're talking about speech, we're really talking about how we say sounds and words. So how we say sounds and words requires processing in the brain that tells which muscles to move when. So telling our tongue and our lips and our jaw exactly how to move, how quickly, where to go, and with how much tension and all of that. It's a really complex neural process that then produces actual speech, produces us actual sounds. So whenever that neural processing is inefficient, then we see a variety of errors that happen, and those can be things like vowel and consonant distortions, groping or trial and error movements, where we might see a child kind of trying to figure out where to move their mouth and how to move their mouth, some awkward movements, things like that. And so there's certain errors and patterns that we see. And when we see that pattern of errors, then we label that type of speech sound disorder childhood apraxia of speech. So childhood apraxia of speech is a speech sound disorder. It may occur with a language disorder. So certainly many children that we see have a language disorder, which might be receptive, might be expressive, almost certainly is expressive, and then also have childhood apraxia of speech. The importance of having this label and knowing that a child has childhood apraxia of speech, or that we suspect they have childhood apraxia of speech, is that then means a big change in treatment direction. So as speech language pathologists, if we have young children who are not yet talking, we really focus a lot on language, and language is, of course, incredibly important. But if we then think, again, that neural processing is inefficient, then that does mean that there's some changes in therapy that should happen to really help the processing become more efficient, help these children learn to motor plan these movements to be able to speak and to be able to speak clearly. So then we start thinking about a set of principles we know of called the principles of motor learning, which means that we'll be really carefully thinking about the speech targets that children are working on. Again, when we're thinking about language, we want to expose them to all the vocabulary we can, and there's, so we want just really big bass or, things like that. But then when we're thinking about actual production for speech, if we think a child has childhood apraxia speech, or we know a child has childhood apraxia speech, then we really think about how complex of a movement is this. And so we think about that when we're selecting goals, and then of course also thinking about how functional and motivating is this for the child, and we try to find that sweet spot. So we really carefully think about which targets we're going to practice the speech, and then we need to practice them a lot, with a lot of repetition and with a lot of multi-sensory cueing, where we're really helping the child as much as possible, not just I say it, you say it, but I'm going to help you say it by saying it with you, by touching your mouth if I need to help in those ways, things like that, and then carefully giving feedback and carefully fading that feedback. And that's all based on the research that we do have about effective treatment for childhood apraxia of speech. So that's the importance of identifying that part of the disorder so we can really then address it appropriately in therapy, while we're continuing, of course, to also work on language and AAC and really helping the child with their overall communication. We really want to be addressing all of those areas of communication to help a child really make, just be the best that they can be.
Absolutely. Well, one of the aspects of this webinar series that I'm really excited about is that our children really are on the entire spectrum of speech language communication. We have some that are very young and that aren't producing any sounds verbally at this point at all. We have some pretty proficient speakers out there. We have kids that are using AAC devices and some that are really rocking sign language. And so our kids are amazing and able to do a lot of communication if we give them the right tools and speech therapy that they need. And so that's why I'm really excited about this series, because we are going to be tackling some topics that maybe will give our families some resources on things to try, how to manage things that they're seeing going on in their life. We put out a survey earlier in the year to kind of ask our families what is important. And on the topic of speech and language, we got a lot of feedback. So we are going to be producing with Breanna a series of kind of short videos on different topics. The first one we're going to be doing is managing challenging behaviors secondary to communication issues. So she's going to walk us through, like, how do we notice that this is a communication problem, and how can we work together with our child to kind of get past the behavior and kind of restore calm maybe in our homes. And so we're really excited about that. We really, that is a topic that our families have expressed a lot of need for resources on. Another topic that I'm really excited about is improving literacy for complex communication needs, children with complex communication needs. So that means for even with for children that are not yet speaking, there are opportunities for them to learn to read. And so Breanna is going to be sharing some really exciting research on the topic, and then also giving us information on how to get started. So really, really excited about that. And then something that we really looked for in our foundation is ways to get families started with speech therapy. And so what does speech therapy look like as it changes over time? So that's another topic we will be discussing together, is where does it start at the very beginning, and what does it look like as our child progresses through the stages of communication improvement? Anyway, I also meant to say earlier that Breanna took part in our speech language communication roundtable, and also provides speech therapy to a child with SATB2 associated syndrome. So she has some background with our genetic syndrome, and really is going to be able to tailor the information, the expertise that she has about childhood apraxia of speech, but also help us really get specific on some of the issues that are important to families of SATB2 associated syndrome. So Breanna, I'm really excited to work with you over the next few weeks producing this series, and thank you so much.
Yes, I'm excited as well, Casey, and thanks so much for having me today, and I look forward to our chats in the future.